Hi everybody, welcome. It's a lovely sunny day today, so I'm wearing a Hope Fashion white linen kind of loose top over my sweaty Betty's today. I thought that would be appropriate for the weather, and I have to say that the sun coming out and shining and being so warm is definitely lifting my spirits. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today. I'm wondering how you're feeling. We haven't talked on the videos here about our mental health for some time, and I thought I'd mention it today because it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And I've certainly been stimulated to talk about this by a post on Super Troopers a couple of days ago. It was a beautiful photograph of the Super Trooper member with her son and daughter, and she told us the very sad story that her son had unfortunately committed suicide, taken his own life, I think at the age of about 18. And she said that because it's Mental Health Awareness Week, she wanted to pay tribute to her son, how hard he had struggled with mental health issues, and sadly had decided that he didn't want to live anymore. And she said, I think of him every single day, and from moment to moment he's in my thoughts. So I think we can all identify with the sadness of a situation like that. And we can also be aware of the kind of things to do with mental health that might lead to that situation. Now, in terms of your own mental health, while this awful pandemic is still raging around the world, we talked, I think, really on almost the first video I did with you about some of the ways to stay perhaps cheerful and positive and so on. We talked about having a treat box, and I don't know whether you remember, but I decided to put a Mother's Day present into my treat box, which is a bar of caramel and pink salt chocolate. And you'll see that there is still 2 pieces left, ready for when I next need it. So what I've been doing, I kept that in my fridge, and every now and again, if I just felt that I needed a little bit of a lift, I'd go and have a piece of absolutely delicious chocolate. The other thing that I've been giving myself a little lift every now and again is by indulging in some retail therapy. So you remember the Soul Bliss shoes in navy blue? Well, I decided to treat myself for a pink pair because it's got a 10% discount on it, and I just love the navy ones so much. They're so comfortable. I've been out shopping in them and they are just gloriously comfortable. So I thought, you know what, a pink pair would be nice for the summer. You know how much I love my pink. So I think we can just help ourselves a little bit with things like gratitude lists, maybe keeping a journal, and trying to be as upbeat and as positive as we possibly can be. However, for some people that is very, very difficult and challenging indeed. And I'm sure there are people watching this who are really struggling. And, my heart absolutely goes out to you because I think it must be very difficult in the current situation for some people to stay positive. Now, I just thought that for this video, I'd reflect a little bit on those things that mean that mental ability and health is compromised in some way, shape or form. I don't think as a society we deal very well with people who are, I'm going to put this in big quotes, not normal. We're not very good at understanding. We're not very good at empathizing. We're not very good at forgiving. We tend to think that people ought to pull themselves together or behave better if they're exhibiting signs of other mental ability from what we consider to be appropriate. This has been brought home very much to me since my little granddaughter India was born. Now, obviously, she doesn't suffer from mental health issues, but she does suffer quite major mental disability. When she was born, there was obviously something very wrong with her. Physically, she wasn't at all well, and for a while, she wasn't expected to live. We had no idea what her mental capacity would be, but as she has got bigger, she's now 8 years old, it's clear that she has quite definite mental deficit, let's put it that way. She probably operates at the level of about a 3-year-old. I mean, she's an absolute delight. So, you know, please don't take away from this the message that we have a problem child on our hands. We don't in any way, shape or form. She's gorgeous. However, the fact that she has a sort of a faulty wiring, faulty coding in her DNA, because she has a deletion and a duplication on her 18th chromosome, that's officially what's wrong with her, that has affected every cell in her body and of course every brain cell that she has, and it's wrought this considerable havoc, if you like, on her ability to process language and speak and so on. Although she's saying more and more now, and that gives us lots and lots of delight. So of course you've got people who struggle with mental ability. You've then got people, and I certainly have, again, somebody in my life like this who have suffered some kind of catastrophic brain injury, which has led to changes in personality and also behaviour. So I say I have somebody in my family who had a terrible accident at the age of about 20. He suffered considerable brain damage. Although initially, when he got better, he seemed to be fine, but it's exhibited in the form of a kind of personality change, really. So I think he prefers to live alone. He's got a certain degree of OCD. He likes things to be just the way he wants them to be, which makes it challenging for anybody to live with him. He's now in his early 50s. And he has never married or had children. And I do think that the origin of quite a lot of the problems that he has, certainly relating with other people, was caused in that terrible accident that he had, which was no fault of his own, in fact, which was, even more of a tragedy. I also know somebody who suffers from bipolar disease. So this is somebody that I know from my daughter's friendship group, and he's absolutely delightful teenager. I mean, he's just such fun and full of life, very clever, went to Oxford, and not long after he arrived in Oxford he had a mental breakdown and was very, very unwell. He was subsequently diagnosed with bipolar disease, and in his life he has really struggled at times. I mean, he went through a manic phase where he decided that he'd fallen madly in love with a girl that he had just met, and he whisked her off to New York and showered her with gifts and a beautiful huge engagement ring, a huge diamond, and bought a beautiful wedding dress for her to wear, and within about 2 or 3 months had organised this huge wedding. And my daughter, meanwhile, who was very, very fond of him, very close to him, as an ex-school friend, just said, slow down, do you have to rush at this, why don't you just think about it, and she'll still be there in 6 months' time. But he insisted and had this huge wedding, and literally almost 3 months later to the day, he left her, and she was no doubt filled with confusion and upset and despair. I mean, what a terrible thing to have happened to her, but it was all down to whatever was going on in his brain at the time that told him that that was a good thing to do. Happily, he's now in his early 40s. He has now settled down. He's with a partner. He has a couple of children, and I think is on the sort of medication that manages to keep him reasonably stable. And then there is the devastation of Alzheimer's, dementia. I have a very, very good and close friend whose husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 2 years ago. And the irony was he had sort of gradually been getting worse, and his memory was becoming more and more fragile. And just before the pandemic struck, my friend had organised quite a good rota for him weekly, so that he could get some level of one-to-one care at home, but there were also activities that she'd signed him up for, all to keep him going, to keep him stimulated, to delay the progress of the disease and so on. And she was in a really good place just before we had to go into lockdown. Her life was being made a bit easier, but because she was getting a level of appropriate support for him. And then we were all shut in behind our doors. And so she spent a lot of the time in the last few weeks gardening, which is her passion. And her poor husband has been deteriorating very rapidly. I spoke to her over the weekend, and she told me that he keeps losing things and forgetting where things are, so he'll come out to the garden and ask her. And she realised the other day that when she said that something was by the window, he didn't understand what she meant by the word window. So my heart absolutely goes out to her. I can't tell you how sad it makes me feel to hear what she is having to deal with right now. So mental disability, mental injury, the kind of mental disease that leads to things like bipolar and depression and all of those other things that we know about, and the absolute devastation that is wrought by Alzheimer's. All of those things bring home to me very powerfully just how important our mental faculties are, and also, of course, our mental health. So I really do hope that you, if you are suffering in any way at the moment from what you could call poor mental health, that you are getting some support that you need to be able to get you through, because this is not an easy time. And talking about not an easy time, I want to read something which I got from... I think my daughter and I got from somebody who we met at the hospital when India was born. We met lots of delightful people there, parents of other children who were sick in one way or another. And this was the parent of a child with Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a very horrible mental and physical disability. And I don't think her daughter was expected to live, but she gave us this piece of writing, and she said it had really helped her when her daughter was born, and she hoped it would help us. And in a funny kind of way, I reread this morning before I decided to read it out for you. In a funny kind of way, we've kind of all gone to Holland when we were heading towards Italy. I'll explain what I mean by that in this. It's called Welcome to Holland. And it's, I guess, what we have had to go through after India was born. When you're going to have a baby, it's like you're planning a vacation to Italy. You're all excited. You get a whole bunch of guidebooks. You learn a few phrases so you can get around, and then it comes time to pack your bags and head for the airport. Only when you land, the stewardess says, "Welcome to Holland." You look at one another in disbelief and shock, saying, "Holland? What are you talking about? I signed up for Italy." But they explain that there's been a change of plan, that you've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. "But I don't know anything about Holland," you say. "I don't want to stay." But stay you do. You go out and buy some new guidebooks, you learn some new phrases, and you meet people you never knew existed. The important thing is that you're not in a bad place filled with despair. You're simply in a different place than you had planned. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy, but after you've been there a little while and you've had a chance to catch your breath, you begin to discover that Holland has windmills, Holland has tulips, Holland has Rembrandts. But everywhere else you know is busy coming and going from Italy. They're all bragging about what a great time they've had there, and for the rest of your life you'll say, Yes, that's what I had planned too. The pain of that will never go away. You have to accept that pain, because the loss of that dream, the loss of that plan, is a very, very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to go to Italy, you will never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. So I do find that incredibly poignant as a piece of writing, but essentially it is saying that by adjusting to the new situation that you find yourself in, it gives you the opportunity not to regret all the things that you're missing about the destination you were headed towards, and to start to pause, take stock, and enjoy those things that you currently have around you in your life. That's certainly what we've tried very hard to do with India, to say this is how she is, this is how we accept her to be, and we love her so much, no matter what, absolutely no matter what. And to, as I said, to some extent, I think the way that we have been mentally adjusting to finding ourselves in lockdown, and now in this very weird place we are, semi in lockdown, semi not in lockdown, is to say, gosh, there are some good things here too. There are some things to enjoy. You know, there are Rembrandts to look at, and tulips, and windmills. And I think that's basically what we have to do. We have to keep adding to those gratitude lists, if you like, and saying, yeah, it's not where I was heading, but it's where I've landed up, and I'm going to make the very best of it. So I do hope that wasn't too much of a downer for you. I do think that giving pause for thought for those with either mental disability, mental injury, mental disease, or some kind of mental issue, either short, medium or long term, is very, very important. And I shall look forward to seeing you tomorrow when we can meet again and have a lovely, nice cup of tea at the Ritz. So bye-bye and thank you. Bye-bye.